everybody who is listening us today or listen to our recording. This is podcast Happy at Work. My name is Tatyana Koval, and today with my guest we will discuss a new topic for our podcast. This is people-centric innovations. We are living in a world when we meet innovation every day, but the first time we discuss how to make them more people-centric. And my guest today is Talya Landau. Hi, Talya.
Hello,
Hello.
Tatiana. How are you?
Oh, fine, thanks. Talia, usually the first question to all my guests is a question about their professional background, maybe some personal issues if you want to add. Please, could you introduce yourself to my audience?
Of course. First of all, thank you for having me in your podcast. I've been in a very long journey in my career in large organizations. And I think it was an interesting journey because I come from a very technological background. This is where I started my career. And in parallel, I started to study different areas like positive psychology and health coaching. I even did a Kundalini yoga teachers training and mentors training. And I started working on innovation management. So I was leading internal innovation, working on cultural changes for employees in a very large global organization. And I started to think how I can combine my technology career, innovation, and everything human-centered that I studied. And I started to experiment with that. Maybe I'll tell a little bit more about it later on today. And I think that this unique movement from being a technology person to HR is an interesting shift because I come from inside. And I try to connect all these different dots. And today I'm a well-being consultant. I like to call it a strategist. I work with organizations on creating strategic well-being programs. Maybe we can touch base on that also. I'm a lecturer. I talk about this connection between innovation and well-being and really like the topic of energy. So looking at burnout from a different perspective of how we can improve personal and organizational energy.
Dalia, thanks a lot for sharing your background and your experience. It's really huge. It's really wide in the topic of areas that you know. My first question is about innovations. It's first time when we talk about people-centric innovations, but I think it's really important when you make something new for you, for your customers, for your employees, to remember about focus on the people. Could you share your approach? What, firstly, you recommend to the companies who start to think about this approach in the innovations inside organization or maybe for launching something to the market? Please, could you share?
Yes, I think that since we're talking about people working in organizations and we're talking about human-centric, it sounds trivial, but it's not trivial. I think the first step is to really talk to the people and understand them and use empathy. And I like to use a lot of the topics from design thinking approach. So design thinking is very much associated with startups or with product. And I take it to the personal, to the human-centric in HR and in processes that we do in organizations. And the first thing that I send people to do is to, first of all, identify the different types of personas because people are very different, right? Organization, it's a huge word, but it's different people. So you have managers and you have employees who are bachelors and you have working moms and you have people living in the city and people living working remote and you have people who are introverts and extroverts. So it's, we are all different people. So I think the first thing in design thinking is really identifying these kind of people and going and talking to them and asking them about your specific needs, but really feeling into what they are looking for. So I think that's the first step. And also, I think it's really important to involve employees, to involve these different types of personas when you are developing any kind of solutions. And maybe just to add in my approach, really in a nutshell, it's also about doing small interventions in the innovation ways. I think we have some, you're muted, Tatjana.
Yes, we have small technical issues, but I think you're explaining two main steps. I think we'll go deeply to look at this. When we talk about people-centered approach in innovations, then is that what we could to use? What is the main difference for you in the approach as we usually look at innovation and when we start to look from the people-centered perspective? What is the main difference for you?
So I like to use a term that I say we don't live at the edges. And what I mean is, I even don't really like the terminology of work-life balance. I really use life and work and balance. And what I mean when I say we don't live at the edges is we don't live before 8 or 9 a.m. and after 5, 6, 7 p.m. We don't live only on the weekends or on holidays or on retirement. We bring to work whoever we are, including maybe the argument with the spouse or the issues with the kids or the phone call from the bank or the doctor. And when we go home at work and before we get to sleep, we think about all these things. So we are human all the time. That's my basic approach. And the way that I like to use innovation when I bring it, because Einstein said, if you do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, it's a sort of insanity. So how do you break the paradigms in the organization? And when I bring innovation into the story, then, like I mentioned before, I start by talking to the people. I create different kind of experimentation. I have this kind of matrix that I define the different aspects of well-being, because I'm sure you agree with me, it's very holistic in terms of what we mean when we say well-being. Sometimes the organization don't understand, and we look at the different aspects of this matrix, and then we go and we do some kind of gap analysis. So we talk to the people, we understand what we have and what we don't have, and then we ideate solutions, but not from point of view of I know what people need, which is very common. Like, let's do, I don't know, wellness week. Why? What is the benefit? What do people really need now? What kind of people need what kind of solutions? So when we ideate, and I really like to bring to this kind of ideation, this is also coming from the innovation world, different perspectives. So you don't sit with the same people in the same room. Again, you can get the same results. So even to HR discussions, you can bring managers, you can bring people from information technology, you can bring a customer. So as diverse as possible, you can expect to create different kind of solutions. And then you experiment with it. This is the next step when you talk about ideation. So let's do some kind of experiment. Let's go back to our stakeholders. Let's understand the impact. And only then let's take it forward.
I agree with you. What help us then we'll look around. It could bring us more ideas. And I like your idea about small steps, short, small interventions. Usually we decided to start a new life from Monday, totally new in the organization. Sometimes we have the same situation, everything new. But it's difficult to keep your new way. what could you recommend companies how to implement a policy of small interventions, which really could improve their day-to-day life, their business, and the different spheres of work?
So when we talk about small interventions, I think that many people wait for all the stars to align. So it's very true for us personally. One day when I will have time, one day when I will have the money, one day when I will go on vacation. And it's also true for organizations, like you said, like implementing big things require big budgets, big decisions. So I think it's a two-way approach in my perspective. So you need to have some kind of top-down. So I think that in order to create real cultural change and make an impact in an organization, you need some kind of management buy-in. It doesn't need to be from the CEO. If you don't have it, you can get a unit manager or some kind of an executive who is more connected to these areas of, I think it's important to get some kind of sponsor. And I think that it's important because for employees, it's important to see that the company cares. So it's not a cynical thing. It's really something that, someone is putting some kind of an intention. This is top down. And the bottom up is really to start to create different kind of interventions. And when I talk about innovation, I like to use, the song by Leonard Cohen, there is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. I really like this song. So you need to find these cracks. And these cracks, when people think that you need to work and work and work and work and work and work and do this kind of marathons, and you don't have time to breathe and you don't have time to really, get some kind of different perspective, then you can't really innovate. So when I talk about these cracks, I talk about time and space to innovate. So it can be very small. It doesn't need to be scary. Use one of your team meetings, not for work, just to bring some kind of topic. Can be how can we innovate more? It can be what can we do as a team to recognize each other more? It can be even brainstorming about how can we reduce bureaucracy, whatever you choose, whatever, but you can make it really small. You can say, I can dedicate some time in every meeting just to take some kind of fresh air and look at things in a different perspective. I can use 15 minutes breaks to do something as a team. It's these small interventions that allow this time and space for fresh air, I can say, because you cannot expect someone to run and run and run and run and run and not burn out, and you can't expect them not to be innovative and not to be creative and not to create real impact and cultural change in an organization. So I think that's a really, really important aspect of things.
Mm-hmm. It's really interesting, and then I want to ask you more about small intervention. We talk about employee well-being. We firstly talk about innovation, but I want to talk about employee well-being. I absolutely agree with you. What we are the person all the time. We are not a person only at home or outside work. We are a person every day. If we talk about the well-being approach, holistic approach, as you mentioned, how could you recommend companies to use this paradigm for changing their leadership, for changing their management approach, and which intervention, for example, leaders could make right now for changing the style of working with employees, for helping them to feel themselves more as a person, less as a small part of the big organization?
I think that it's a very basic questions sometimes, like I think it starts with the managers, okay? It's not just I think. There are many reports and researchers that show that the managers are a very important key aspect of impacting employees' well-being. There is, I think, a paper talking about more than the doctors and the same as the spouse in terms of the impact on people's health and well-being. And I think that if managers will really ask employees, how are you doing? But really, how are you really doing? And get to know their employees and get to know, they don't need to be their psychologists, they don't need to be their therapist or to provide solutions to everything. I know that the managers are already very, very loaded with a lot of pressure. But I think that this small human to human interaction of people not only managing for work, but managing for people, knowing how to recognize, um, having psychological safety, enabling failure, talking to the team and really bringing their personal authentic self. So even if they have difficulties, so they can share their difficulties. It's a very, when I used to work at Wix, I didn't mention it in the intro, but my two main roles were I was leading the global well-being aspects at Wix, and it's they have a really nice saying, which is saying, come as you are. And I really appreciate this approach of people, come as you are to work, like we talked about, we're people all the time. So I think that for organizations to implement well-being, and I think it's a paradigm shift because well-being is many times considered, and maybe it's not the right word to use, I'm still looking for the correct word, but it's like employee experience, it's this perks, it's something that we do, which is considered many times nice to have, right? If you are cutting budget, then you're cutting this budget. So it can be a mindfulness session or a wellness week, which are very relevant and very important. But I think that when you talk about workplace well-being, from my perspective, it's a very strategic approach. Is how do you embed it in the day-to-day of the culture of the organization? What interventions in all these aspects, and I think it starts with management, but it really touches more of the organizational development departments, learning and development departments, managerial skills. What does it mean to lead with well-being? How do you teach these skills to managers? And how, by the way, it's also amazing that it's not always straightforward, that the managers need to take care of their own well-being, right? If I don't put the oxygen mask on myself, I cannot be an example to other people. So how do I show that I have boundaries? And there are times that I don't send emails and I respect your personal time. And I think it's not necessarily, there are good policies in organizations, but many times it's really personal decisions with your team that can go a long way and make a real, and I can tell you a story about something that I did in an organization.
I absolutely get your approach, and I want to ask one more question about you mentioned what you need to create a culture. Absolutely agree. What well-being it's not just an intervention or just a program. It should be part of a culture. And also, when they talk about culture, people search like we talk also about the culture. What is a look at on mistakes, not like the great problem, like for opportunity, like for the lesson. And it's especially important when we talk about the culture of innovation. Maybe could you share some of your experience how to create a culture when you are from one side, especially it's difficult when a lot of people in the organization prefer to be perfectionists. They prefer maybe avoid some mistakes and do just only the best. How to create the culture when the people feel themselves that they could make mistakes when they're trying something new, when you should not be the perfectionist all the time, especially when you're trying to do something absolutely innovative, absolutely disruptive. Maybe you have some this type of experience, and could you share, please, some ideas?
Yeah, so I can share one example when I was working at Amdocs, which is a global organization. I was working in the innovation team, and at the time I was studying positive psychology, and I decided to test the water and to see what's happening in terms of well-being in my organization. And I was brave, and I think that this is some kind of a strength of a company to enable. It was a leader, one of the general managers who I asked if I can go and do a pilot with 30 employees and meet each week, and we will study different topics related to well-being and reduce stress and burnout and
Uh, Talia?
yes.
Yes, I don't know why the first time so huge technical issues. Uh, I think everything is okay now. Talia, could you back one step when you talk about you start to organize your team and you start to discuss and make some iterations about well-being, and please could you share the results of this your work?
Yes, so what happened with this team is that people saw that the organization enables this kind of, time to uh, do this kind of, discuss these topics, experience these kind of
Mhm.
topics. And from these 25, 30 people, when we finished the intervention, it was around 4 months, meeting every week for 1 hour, not too much. People started to take things into their units, each one what they chose. So two girls took it to do like a meditation hour for their team.
Mhm.
Someone who was leading design sprints for developers brought different topics each time they had a kickoff of the design sprint. So I really saw it as little, bubbles going around
Mhm.
and making these kind of small changes. And then more people wanted to join. So there was a second group and a third group. And I really like this example. And until today, it was a few years ago.
Glad it back to you. It was interesting how you use your approach for uh, engage more and more people. Mhm. Talia, could you hear me? Glad it back to you. It was interesting how you. It's my third time when I have so much interventions. I think I
And
need to check.
checking my network, it looks good. So I
So
don't.
I also from my side also, but I think I will check later what the situation. Why is it so? But because it's our dialogue is so interesting for me, it's for podcast. It's not a problem, but for live stream.
Yeah.
But I hope people could excuse us for these interventions. If you don't mind, I have some more questions for you.
Sure.
Firstly, usually, what helps you to change the mindset of leaders? When we talk about people-centric approach, sometimes we meet with situational leaders who may made all their career based of any other type of mindsets about people. I think what is well-being or doing something for the people. We are not a kindergarten. We are a business. We need results. We need the hard work. So it's time. Sometimes it's difficult. What helps you to change the mindset of leaders for becoming more people-centric?
So first of all, it's a big challenge. And I think that the easiest way is to use data. But here also, like when you talk about innovation, sometimes it's very difficult to connect the dots. So you can measure how much you're doing in an organization versus sick days or people leaving or health aspects, or but it's very difficult to say this impacted that. So I think that a little bit AI can help in helping measure impacts of well-being interventions, but this is one way to show management that well-being is not just nice to have. And there are so many researchers that show that there is an impact on the bottom line. Line. So I think it's obvious, but still, like you mentioned, it's not a very trivial thing to do. And the way that
So, but it's so interesting. I'm gonna switch off. You're on a live stream. It's so great. I don't know what's happening. Talya, so sorry for the technical issues, but I want to ask my last questions for you. It's the
I
usual.
just want to complete the
Yeah,
first
I
part.
think yes. The first part, it's
The first part was about measurement, but the second part that I wanted to mention is about experiencing. So I like to do
ah,
workshops to leaders. And when I do workshops to leaders, I want them to experience. So I
ah,
talk to them about themselves. And sometimes when it comes to their own well-being, and they understand what I mean when I say well-being, that it's not just, just this nice thing, but it's really how we live and how we work. And I talk about these things, then they get it. And when you have one leader that get it, then other leaders can get it. And this, they see that something is working, and hopefully it become contagious in other parts of the organization.
oh, absolutely agree. But a short intervention right to the person, and which could
Yeah.
change your mind. It's really, really important as a data. Data is the usual way. It's what people managers usually think about it. Interventions, the way which could change absolutely everything. And here I agree with you. And here I could recommend also to use a consultant outside the organization. Sometimes
Yes.
it's very, very important. I think is the consultant outside the organization. He or she will have more trust than the person inside the organization,
I
and which.
agree with you. Yes.
Uh, and my last question is traditional question also. It says three main tips which you could give to all organizations which want to build a people-centric culture for the employees and for improving their innovation. Which three main tips could you give?
So the first one, going back to making small steps. I think that it's really about making small steps that add up and make a big difference. So don't wait for big decisions. Don't wait for the stars to align. Start. That's the first thing. The second thing I will say is to involve the people. So don't underestimate the innovation, the creativity, the perspectives, the talents that you have in the organization. Don't think that because you're sitting in a management room, you know it all. Be humble and really bring different perspectives into the room. Um, and the third thing, I will invite people to look at well-being as a strategic part of the day-to-day. So really to think in everything that is being done in the organization, in HR, how can we, because well-being is not a department. How can we make well-being part of everything that we do in the organization? It's not something out there. It's something that needs to be part of every managerial aspect, of every cultural aspect. And I think that this is a very, very big trend and a very big differentiator that will make a big change as well.
Thanks a lot for everything what you're sharing with us. Thanks a lot. I could recommend everybody who will hear our podcast to follow you on LinkedIn. I think that you share some very interesting ideas. And thanks a lot for participation.
Thank you so much. And thank you for all the work that you do. It's inspiring.
Thanks a lot. This is podcast Happy at Work. Stay tuned.